welcome to another episode of the Irish Craft Beer Show, where once again I'm joined by John Duffy, better known from the Beer Nut blog. So
Hi everyone.
How's it going, John? And what are we drinking today? Well, today we have from Trouble Brewing in County Kildare, we have Whistleblower IPA. So.
Whistleblower is a very new release from Trouble. It made its debut at the Easter Festival this year as part of a series which included a brown ale, a saison, a rye IPA, and it's very recently been bottled. I confess I wasn't especially impressed by the draft version at the festival, so this has had a little bit longer. It's been on a bit of a journey, as all good IPAs do, go on an international journey and come back. A little bit hazy. Smells good, smells dank, smells slightly sweaty, but not necessarily in a bad way. There's lots of crystal malt sweetness in there, a bit of toffee.
Definitely toffee, yeah.
It's 7.6%.
What was it? 7.6.
7.6, yeah. So it is quite strong for an IPA. There are some Irish breweries that would call this a double IPA, but we won't go into that. Oh, that is much better. There's a very, very assertive, almost astringent hop bitterness. It's kind of a dry effect that you get. It's kind of an anacidic effect that kind of dries your palate out, which is quite pleasing.
It is.
But then that toffee thing comes through, so it's one of those beers where it's not quite balance. It's just complexity. It's two different things happening at the same time, which is good. It's very drinkable. It's very
drinkable. Yeah.
It's nicely sippable. You wouldn't sort of toss it down you, but it's it's one that you can gradually get through, and I'll be interested to see what it's tasting like by the time we get to the end of the glass.
Yes. But I must say, I kudos for calling a 7.6% beer an IPA. I think that just shows how we've moved on as a beer drinking nation.
Oh God, if we're becoming a nation of style obsessives, I'm out. That's it. I quit.
No, a few years ago, this would be called a triple IPA.
There's still room for Ireland's first triple IPA. There, I said it.
But it does taste different than I remember it at the Franciscan Well Easterfest.
Definitely, yeah, much better.
Which, speaking of Franciscan Well Easterfest, which was what I was hoping to talk about today, which was beer festivals. How's that for a segue?
Yeah, I think you just ruined it there, Brad.
Because I think that the beer festivals are where we get our first try of most new beers from Irish breweries.
Yeah, well, for a long time it was the only way that you would ever experience exotic beers from places like Roscommon and Cork was to go to beer festivals.
My memory of beer festivals, the very first Irish beer festival I attended was in 2009, the Septemberfest in Phoenix Park, run by Board Bia at the time. And that's where I actually first discovered that, wow, we actually have microbreweries in Ireland. Yeah. Before that, I'd known about with Porterhouse and Mrs. Maguire brew pubs, and to me, that was the entire craft beer scene in Dublin at the time. And I think it probably was. Yeah. And it wasn't really until Beer Festival when I discovered Galway Hooker and discovered Hilden and Whitewater were there as well. Who else were there?
West Kerry were there. I remember West Kerry had to do a run back to Dingle overnight after they sold out of beer. David Llewellyn was there. Porterhouse were there. It was the launch of Porterhouse beer in bottles for the very first time.
I remember that, yes.
It was the tail end of a Good Store IPA, the special edition beer that went on to become O'Hara's IPA.
It was pale ale.
There was a lot of special stuff that weekend. It was back when large events in Phoenix Park weren't just about the stabbings.
Yes. But to me, that was the beginning of my discovery of Irish craft beer. I had moved on from the typical Irish beers beforehand, but to me, if I wanted craft beer, I had to go to Redmond's in Ranelagh and I had to get whatever American beer had been sitting on in a container ship for the last 6 months.
American, if you were lucky. You get sort of an exotic pint of something from Marston's.
But since then we've come on leaps and bounds. I mean, how many beer festivals are there in Ireland at the moment?
God, there's I'd say you can rely on at least 5 during the year. There's a certain extent to which they come and go. Brewers on the Bay was the one that Galway Bay Brewery used to run on the Maybank holiday weekend. That's kind of gone, but that's been replaced by the RDS, by Doolin. Yeah. We had our first in Kildare, not in Kildare, in Kilkenny. The other Kill. We had our first in Kilkenny just there in the June Bank holiday weekend. This weekend, some weekends ago, there was the first ever summer cider festival at Franciscan Well. So that's that's a new event on the calendar. Just whatever 2 or 3 years ago they introduced the. It's not, no, it's not a beer festival. Of course, it's not a beer festival. It's another thing on the calendar for people who like to drink quality artisan products. 2 or 3 years ago, Franciscan Well introduced the Cask and Winter Festival, and that was originally token cask. And
that was really using up the winter beers because every February, and it's now turned into it's one of the major events. It's one of the major events, and it also happens on my birthday weekend every year. So it has become one that I never miss. I went there first for my 30th birthday, where we took the infamous the day trip to Cork. For those of you who don't know, Ireland is not that big a country. Dublin and Cork are maybe 2.5 hours apart by train. So quite easy to do a train down in the morning in time for the lunch beer festival, train home in the evening, and
and journey back's always shorter for some reason.
I don't remember many journey backs. But so like that's also to me it's the beginning of the beer season. It's the middle of February. It's the first beer festival of the year. Now this year we had was it in February as well? Alltech put on the.
That's right. That was the beginning of February.
That was the beginning of February. They put on a festival in the conference centre in Dublin, where they had craft beer conference for a couple of days. Was on the exhibition floor, was open to the public. Put on a festival which was a lot of beers which you don't often see in Ireland. And
it was incredible, I mean, there were a number of new Irish breweries launched at N17 and so on. They brought over a range of beers from their native Kentucky, which was great to see. And then there was all of this Spanish and Italian beer that we never see here, Norwegian beer that we never see here.
It was Danish. No Norwegian beer.
Oh, sorry. It was an imperial stout.
It was Danish. This is important. You're lucky my normal camera person isn't here. So.
Danish beer that we never see here, just it was great, and I think
even
that
Welsh beer.
And there was a Welsh beer bar, which was a fantastic idea.
They're our closest neighbour, and we never see Welsh beer.
Yeah, well, we get brains, but that doesn't count.
Yes. And a lot of actual brewers came over. It wasn't just the local distributor serving the beer. It was people who were.
Well, I think the idea behind it is just this great enthusiasm for craft beer from a company that isn't directly involved in making it in Ireland, but has been a consistently great supporter of it. I think there's a lot that they can do. There's a lot of room for interplay between native Irish brewing and sort of the whole Alltech family of company and products and so on. Not to get too corporate about it.
Yes.
So it's great just to see that support, that interest, and that it's not just words on a screen. It's an actual event where you can go along and drink beer and learn about beer. And they have that awards thing, very, very meticulously run awards system, giving out medals and giving out a beer of the year. It's unfortunate that the second time they did it wasn't an Irish brewery one. I believe it was a Danish beer won the beer of the festival. But it's still, it's great to see. It's great that there's that interest there.
So that was February. In March we had the festival in the IFSC, run by the same people who run the RDS festival. Which it's less of a meet the brewer, try new beer thing. It's more of an introducing a different crowd to craft beer. I find with that. That is it's over St Patrick's weekend.
It's part of
a lot of people come to Dublin. A lot of tourists come to Dublin that weekend, and a lot of locals would drink in the city centre, wouldn't drink in the city centre. So
it's not sort of a destination for the beer geek. It's not that sort of festival. It's just one other thing that you can go to on St Patrick's weekend if you don't want to go to the fairground or the parade or whatever. There's somewhere you can go drink beer, and that's great.
But it was where they I had my first taste of O'Hara's new stout,
Dublin
to Dublin, which was very much a highlight of that weekend for me. Great beer. Was it March? What else we had? Well, this in April we had one of the beer highlights of the year, which I think you'll agree as well, which is the Easterfest in Franciscan Well. And this was probably the biggest I've ever seen Easterfest. It was
getting bigger and better every year. I think that the resources that the Franciscan Well can now call upon as part of the Molson Coors family really showed at that festival that it wasn't breweries coming in and setting up their own bars. It was all of the technical stuff was done for them. The taps were all there. It was basically plug and play. You had one big bar. that was still manned by the individual brewer, so you could still buy the beer from the person that made it, which is the whole point of festivals, I think, is having that direct contact between the brewer and the customer. But because they were so much closer together, because it was one big bar, you could squeeze more in, which is always a benefit.
And that's now, down through the years, a lot of craft breweries had their launches there in the Easterfest. And even this year, there was one or two breweries I hadn't seen before. There was Nine White Deer.
Nine White Deer had their first initial batches there, and JJ's in County Limerick, I think, technically, the first County Limerick brewery. They launched there. There was, the first appearance of these new beers from Trouble.
Trouble, like they launched a whole new range. There were 4 new beers there.
That's right.
Yeah.
And a couple of ciders as well, and lots of interesting stuff.
Lots of interesting stuff this year. So we're up to April, and what was the next craft beer festival? I'm blanking now. I don't think I've really been to many of them. They keep happening. If you check the calendar on bure.org, we tend to keep that up to date with what's coming up. But we're now coming into what I would consider the more premium, not premium, but bigger craft beer festival.
Yeah, so at the end of August is the Hilden, so it's the Northern Bank Holiday weekend. The Hilden Festival at the Hilden Brewery. It's one of the longest running ones. It's been going for a very long time.
It's another one you can day trip from Dublin on the train.
You can, you can get the train up. You can change at Portadown. You can walk from Lisburn. It's not difficult to get to. It's a wonderful outdoor, open air, very family friendly festival. They have lots of live music. It's a beer and music festival. They have all of the Hilden beers. They have usually a very carefully chosen range of beers over from Great Britain, and usually they'll have something from the whatever they certainly used to have beers from the Republic as well, and then
the Free State.
And lots of wonderful Armagh cider as well, which is of course what you want.
Just remember to bring Sterling.
And just remember to bring Sterling, yes. And they have a barbecue and they have face painting, and it's a really fun day out, and there's no hassle or aggro, and it's just really nice. They have put their prices up a little bit, but I would say it's still worth going to. It's still worth making the day trip to it.
Yeah, and then in September this year, I think the 4th September it begins, is the biggest event in the craft beer calendar of the year, and that's the All Ireland Craft Beer Fest. And I think they've added cider since they printed it.
It's no longer the All Ireland Craft. It's the Irish Craft Beer and Cider Festival.
Yes, and that takes place in the RDS, the first weekend of September every year, and it takes place in the Industries Hall in the RDS, which is a big, massive exhibition hall, which allows each individual craft brewery to set up their own bar and.
This will be the 4th iteration of it, I believe, and it seems to be getting bigger every year. And last year there still was plenty of space that you could squeeze the breweries in a bit tighter.
Yeah, last year they introduced the different size of bars. They had, like, the more established breweries had their own bigger bars with more taps, more space around them. But then they had the corner with all the new breweries who just had their small festival bar and maybe 1 or 2 beers on tap.
Yeah, and it's great that we now have an equivalent of the GBBF or of the Zithos Beer Festival. It's our big national festival. It's there in that one place in the calendar.
It's pretty much every brewery in Ireland comes to it, and a few of the importers will set up. We'll set up bars for the beers they import as well. So you can get a taste of the international stuff, but it is mostly about the local.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's great food out at the Pie Man's normally there. Jane Russell sausages,
pizzas,
and the National Homebrew Club are there if you want to learn about homebrewing. There's absolutely no better place to go along and talk
normally
to
a few free samples at that day.
Yes. that was a hard fought thing, but it's great that we have it, and that the brewers have been so supportive of it. So it's general. It's a big love, and it's a big sort of happy free for all, and very civilized.
And there's always some great festival specials that you'll get.
That's it. You get that proper fun thing that you get at festivals of the blackboard of the ever changing beers. And the likes of Dungarvan in particular always have very, very good specials that you never see again.
Or one of my favourite things last year was when Sam Black, it was the first time I met Sam Black, and he showed up with his Kinsale Pale Ale, which was 1 beer. So I think you have your 1 sample on the Thursday evening, and that's it for the weekend. Except he came up with a hop randle. and every couple of hours would change the hop that the beer was being pumped through. So I kept going back and buying another Kinsale beer to try different hops, which it was quite interesting just actually to get to know your hops as well. I've since used some of the stuff I learned that day in my home brewing. I know which hops I like. It was a good way of doing that, but I just thought it was a great way of getting repeat traffic.
Oh, absolutely, and keeping the turnover. I think I don't really see why you would put a hop roundel on something like Kinsale Pale Ale. It's perfectly hoppy already. If they'd moved it a couple of stands over to Tom Queen's Lager, I'd have been a lot more interested to see that run through a bit of Simcoe.
And I think that's basically all the festivals we have.
Cool.
So far.
Still enjoying the lovely crisp grassy bite from the Whistleblower.
It's going down well. Anyway, so
cheers to you.
Cheers.